Hello everyone, Steve here, back again with another tabletop baseball video. Let me get this set up and we'll be ready to go. It's been an interesting week for me in the hobby. One of the things I did over the last weekend was post a video and offered three games for free, and I would just give them away and ship them at my cost. All three games were claimed quite quickly, and interestingly, one of the games was claimed by somebody who lives in the same town that I do, about 20 miles away from me, but more or less in the same town. So I got to meet another gamer in person. And on the same day, I met another gamer who I've talked to many times on the Facebook groups and so on. And we've been meaning to get together for quite a long time, and we did get together for lunch. And we actually grew up in an area not far from each other, and we found out that we overlapped at college for 1 year at the same college. In any event, part of the reason for getting together is this newfound friend gave me a copy of a game called Hotcorner Baseball, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So Hotcorner Baseball was copyrighted or came out in 1991. It actually came in a pretty big red box, and there were, as I understand it, there were 26 teams, kind of all-time great teams in the set, half of which were carded, individual players were carded, and half of which were on roster sheets. So that's what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to do the best I can to describe this game. I do not claim to understand every nuance of this game for sure. There's just a lot compacted together in a small footprint in this game. So the title of my video is Second Look Hotcorner Baseball. You say, well, why are you calling it Second Look? Well, the reason is that Kurt Bergland, who most of you probably know, has a video called First Look at Hotcorner. And I've provided the link here, and this will be in the description of this video. And I really strongly suggest that you look at that video first. It's probably no more than 15 minutes. And it's not quite an unboxing, but he more or less goes through all the components that you would get if you had a copy of Hotcorner Baseball. And so I'm not going to duplicate what he has done there, but it might be worthwhile for you to check that out and then come back and watch this video, or watch this video first and then go watch his. There's a couple other links here. One is kind of the obligatory link to Board Game Geek and the description of the game in that site. Like many of these vintage games, there's not a lot of information to be had, but there's the link nonetheless. Now, the creator of this game is his name is Dominic Carota, and apologies if I'm saying that wrong. And so the next link actually is to his latest game, which I think is just a few years old, called Here's the Pitch. And you can either find out information by clicking on this Delphi forum link, or I've provided his direct email address that you can contact him. And Kurt has also done a lot of videos, or a couple of videos at least, on Here's the Pitch, as has Tony Porter. I have not reached out to Dominic. At one point in this process, I thought about actually seeing if he would do an interview about Hotcorner, and that could still happen, but I'm going to forge ahead here for now with what I've put together. I do make reference to 50/50 game engines in this video, and I do have a video on how that math works. My contact information is at the bottom here. You can definitely comment. Any comments you have, especially if you have any knowledge of this game, please comment. I also generally make the PowerPoints for these presentations available, so let me know if you'd like to see that. And then you can like and subscribe if that's, if you're so inclined. Let's go. So I didn't know the right order in which to present Hot Corner, but what I decided to do is just show the fact that the basic game comes with hitter cards, which are green, pitcher cards, which are red print, team cards, which are generally blue print, I think, although they may be black sometimes, and then a pitcher hitting card if you're playing pre-DH or what have you. Not much to say about these at this stage other than if you look at the team card, there is a ballpark rating, which I'll touch on here in a minute. The game engine for Hot Corner is what I'm calling a modified 50/50. And I'll explain this in great detail, but you roll 3 dice, 1 red and 2 white. The red is typically a decider die, very similar to what you have in stratomatic. And then the other 2 you add up, the 2d6 you add up to get a number that you would look up on a chart. I'll show a flow chart here in a second about how the game flows, but the very first step is definitely 50/50. It's a little different after that. Speaking of flow chart, here is the flow chart. So starting on the left, the very first thing that you do is you have to check to see if there's a strikeout or a walk. And again, this is where the 50/50 comes in, because half the time you'll check the pitcher card and half the time you'll check the batter card. And so it's possible that you'll get a strikeout or a walk result. And if you do, you're done with that batter and you move on. But if you don't, then you assume the batter has made contact. And the next step is to check for a hit on what's called chart A, or the hitting chart. And that's the core of the game engine, to be quite honest. And so you may get an out from that chart, or maybe some other results like a pass ball or wild pitch or something. But if you don't get an out, then you go over to step 3 because you have a hit, and basically you need to figure out the type of hit. And so you roll yet again and read what's called the power chart, and you will get a hit type from that. I may not have the flow chart drawn exactly correctly because that dotted arrow to step 4 probably should be connected to step 2. But there is an optional fielding aspect to this game where individual fielding ratings come into play. And I'll try to explain in simple terms how that works at the very end. But yeah, that's probably more kind of step 3B instead of step 4. Okay. One interesting thing I was going to say is this flow, this engine design, is at least 90% exactly what my own sim was that I made back when I was a late teenager. And so I found it very interesting. And as a result, it allowed me to do some calculations, which I'll talk about in a minute. So let's talk about the individual cards. So this is a hitter card. This is Brooks Robinson, 1969. See his stats at the bottom. And the first blue box has his fielding rating, which is third base, and a plus. Again, we'll talk about that later. And if he was an outfielder or a catcher, he would have an arm rating as well. There's an injury rating at the top, but since he played almost every game, looks like his injury rating is only 1. And then you see the box that I've drawn for the strikeout or walk. That's that first step that I talked about. You roll all 3 dice. The red determines whether it's the pitcher card or the batter card, and the sum of the 2d6 white die is what you check against these strikeout and walk ratings. And for this rating, you read the 2d6 total. So that 12 means if you roll double sixes on the 2d6s, then he has struck out. And that's 1 chance out of 36, which should be a little less than 3%, if I'm not mistaken. So that's a pretty low strikeout rate, if I'm doing my math correctly. Same thing for walks. If the sum of the dice add up to 10, then he has walked. And a 10 corresponds to 3 chances out of 36, which is a little less than 10%, a little less than 9% maybe. You can kind of see the stats here at the bottom. I was able to replicate these ratings almost exactly, with one exception. And the one exception was that I think the creator of the game did not exclude intentional walks from the walk totals when computing the walk rating. So in some cases, I had fewer walk chances by 1 notch than what's on the card. Assuming there's no strikeout or walk, as we said, we go to step 2 and we roll all 3 dice again. And this is where the batter's hitting rating comes in. And this is a number between 0 and 14, I guess, in terms of a hitting rating. And we'll see in a minute how that comes into play. This is where the game engine evolves a little bit. It's more like some other games that I've featured recently, like the world's greatest baseball game, in the sense that you may adjust the hitting rating up or down by a notch or 2, depending on the pitcher's pitching rating, and you'll see that on the pitcher card on the next page. There are separate running and stealing ratings. That's not going to be the focus of today. But that's a nice feature, I think. And then, as I said, if there is a hit, then you use these single, double, triple, and home run ratings to help interpret off of the power chart, interpret what type of hit it actually turns out to be. So that's the hitter card. And then here we have a pitcher card, which is Gary Nolan from the 1975 Reds, the Big Red Machine. He pitched 211 innings, 32 starts, pretty good record, pretty good ERA. So he also has a strikeout and walk rating. His strikeout rating is 3, so that's 3 out of 36. Not a real high strikeout rate, I guess I would say, but he kind of pitched to contact. He had great control, and you see that over on the right side where his walk rating of 0. So if if the result is on the pitcher card, there's no walk chances at all on his pitcher card. And actually, his walk rate was so low, he only walked 29 batters in 211 innings, which is just absolutely phenomenal low walk rate. And not only is his ideal walk rating 0 on his card, but it would actually take away walks from the bat, that would pass over from the batter card. And so that's what that asterisk 4 means. So if there is a walk indicated by the batter card, you have to roll 1d6 again. And in this case, if it's 1 to 4, then the walk sticks from the batter card. But if it's 5 or 6, it goes away. So this is one case where the pure 50-50 is not does not hold true, and it's a really good feature, as many people know about how 50-50 engines work and some of their shortfalls. It makes it hard at times to reflect properly low frequency adjustments. There are some other sims that do this well. One is called Deep Drive Baseball, and they have kind of these rare features, rare indicators that will take away some of the results that otherwise would happen. Ballpark Baseball had these control numbers at the bottom of the pitcher and batter cards, which would accomplish the same exact idea as here, that occasionally you need to kind of override the initial result. Hope that made sense. I did put a link to the 50-50 math in the description, so you can follow up on that to learn more. So the key rating, I think, on the pitcher card here is what the creator called the toughness rating. And this rating is the rating that you would use to modify the hitting rating that we talked about on the batter card previously. It so happens that Gary Nolan's toughness rating here is 0. So there would be no further adjustment to the batter card hit rating. I'll try to explain these other ratings as best I can. You'll see in a minute the support rating and where it comes in, but each pitcher also had a support rating that went from A to E, and I think A being best and E being worst, if you will. And we're not going to spend a lot of time talking about it, but this was also where you would find something called a stopper rating that some relief pitchers would have. There's also the third box there, something called the adjustment rating, and that is used to adjust how you read the power chart, and we'll kind of leave it at that. I think maybe the support rating and definitely the adjustment rating. The adjustment rating was definitely designed to help the pitcher card influence the mix of hits that occurred that actually occur when you read the power chart. And so if you had a low home run pitcher, there might be like a -2H where you would reduce the batter's home run rating by 2. Or conversely, if the pitcher gave up a lot of home runs, there might be a positive adjustment rating for home runs. The last thing, which is kind of interesting, not sure the true goal of this, but there's an optional shutout rating. And basically the way it works is if the pitcher's throwing a shutout through like 8 innings maybe, then instead of this adjustment rating that we just talked about, it's replaced by this shutout rating. And my best interpretation of that is if a pitcher had 0 or few shutouts, then this rating will actually it will make it more likely that he doesn't get a shutout, because it's going to add, in this case of Gary Nolan, it's going to add to to the batter's single rating and the batter's home run rating. Whereas if you had somebody who had a lot of shutouts in a season, this rating could be negative. Relief pitchers don't get a shutout rating at all, and some regular pitchers don't have a shutout rating either. But the outliers are kind of captured here. So yeah, that's the pitcher card. So just for fun, I did a little math to try to see if I could make sense of the pitcher toughness rating, that being the rating that adjusts the batter's hitting rating. So here you see 9 pitchers, and I came up with what I believe is the right metric to measure the pitcher toughness rating. And then I listed out the actual toughness rating from the pitcher cards. And then I ran a correlation, and I saw that the R squared was 0.67. Not the best correlation, but part of the issue is that there are 2 clear outliers here. If I delete the outliers, you see on the lower right of the screen, there's a 0.94 R squared, which you can see pretty clearly that there is a relationship from my metric to the rating that they assigned. I'm not really reverse engineering this game. I think potentially I could, but in any event, I just was curious to see how that worked. And you can see that the toughness ratings, several of them are 0, as we talked about with Gary Nolan. A guy with a high metric has a +2. There's a couple -1s. So not major adjustments necessarily, but adjustments nonetheless. So there's a lot on this page. Basically, with the game comes this trifold chart book, if you will. And this is the main engine of the game. It's either referred to as the hitting chart or chart A. And there's essentially 6 columns on this chart. And then also at the bottom right here is the power chart. Now, you obviously can't read this, so I'm going to do a deeper dive on these charts right now to help explain what happens after you've determined there's no strikeout or walk in step 1. So we roll again for step 2. Oh, before I do that, and you can pause this and read it if you want, but there are different result codes that we'll see, or we just saw on that hitting chart and the power chart. And they range from like 5 or 6 or 7 different infield outs, 3 different types of outfield outs, 3 or 4 different types of singles, the variations more or less involving runner advancement. Same thing for doubles. There's 3 kinds of doubles. Runners advance 2 bases, runners advance 3 bases, or a 2 base advance plus an optional 3 base advance. And then, of course, triples and home runs. And then there are also error codes, a couple for infield errors and a couple for outfield errors. And then, of course, wild pitches, hits, batsmen, pass balls, and balks. So this is that same hitting chart that I showed you before. This is the left side of it. And as I said, these charts, the left and right side, are essentially 6 columns relating to the 6 outcomes from the red die. And so I've circled 1, 2, and 3, and I've put in these blue divider lines that aren't on the original chart, which makes it much easier to read the chart, in my opinion. I struggled for a while to figure out how this chart worked. But anyways, let's just say you rolled a 2 on the red die and double 3s on the white die, that would be a 2-6. So you would go down the 2 column and you would go across the 6 row. And what you see there is a possibility of an infield out or a hit. And more than that, let's just say it's an infield out, that IF-1. If it's a left-hand batter, you can see that would be an infield ball hit to the first baseman. And if it's a right-hand batter, it's an infield ball hit to the third baseman. So that's a little bit where handedness comes into this, and that's where the fielding, individualized fielding, would be triggered as well. If you go over to column 3, I've annotated a couple things. So every one of these cells is split. Not quite exactly like stratomatic, where sometimes you have certain results that are split and you resolve it by rolling the d20. Here, essentially every single cell result is split. So in the upper right here, red die number 3, which has recently been banned, would give you either an infield out or potentially a pass ball and an infield out, number 5. But the way it's split is that pitcher support rating that we talked about. If the pitcher has a support rating of A, B, C, or D, you read the top row of result there. And if it's support rating E, you read the bottom row of the result there. So that's an example where a lot of these results are dictated by the support rating. It's not perfectly clear to me what the basis is for the support rating, because depending on the result, it could be a determinant as to whether there's a wild pitch or pass ball. It could be a determinant as to whether there's an error or not. And, it's just not perfectly clear to me, if I were to try to assign a support rating, how I would do it. I had a few thoughts, but since I'm not going to do it, I didn't pursue it any further. The other way that the results are split, and if you go down column 3 to row 9, you can see that it says 0 to 6 is an infield out, number 4 type, and if it's 7 to 14, it's a hit. And so what do those numbers refer to? 0 to 6 and 7 to 14. Those are the hit rating from the batter card, possibly adjusted by that toughness rating from the pitcher card. And so, depending on what the combined or adjusted hit rating is, that tells you what the result is. And of course, if you have a higher hit rating, then you're going to have hits more often. So let's say your adjusted hit rating was only 4, and you rolled red 3 and the white die summed up to 5. So over there on the right, 0 to 4 is an infield out of type number 1. 5 to 14 is a hit. So if the adjusted hit rating was only a 4, that would be an out. I think that makes sense. If it doesn't, kind of pause and study this chart a little bit, or rewind. I guess there are a couple instances where there are no splits. I'm just looking down column number 1 and result number 7. It's basically hit every time, because the batter hit rating is only going to range from 0 to 14. So all hit ratings are going to be a hit in that case, but most cells are split. That's the left side of the chart. If we go to the right side of the chart, it's the same idea. There's 3 more columns, 4, 5, and 6. Again, I've kind of highlighted them and divided them. And as I said, if it's an out, then at the edge of the columns is how you determine who fielded the ball. I think that's it for this chart. There's a lot going on here. There can be error results that come from this chart, regular outs, hits, etc. If there is a hit, you roll again, and then you look at this power chart. And here's where you look at the batter's ratings for singles, doubles, triples, and home runs. So basically the way it works is you're trying to see, for the most part, if there's an extra base hit. So if you look over in column 6 on the right, and some of the white die being 2, if the batter has a triple rating of 1 to 10, then it's a triple. If he doesn't have that rating, then he doesn't get a triple. So if it turns out that the result on this table does not apply, then it defaults to a single of one of 2 types. And that's basically how it works. You can study a little bit at the bottom of the page, and then there's some other special characters where they might somehow add additional doubles or additional home runs or what have you. So yeah, that's the power chart, step 3. So what I'll call the basic game, there's a lot of the standard features you would expect in a basic game, and they're all here and explained in the 14 or 15 page rule book. Yeah, it explains basically the things we didn't talk about in terms of the basic game, but this is where they explain that strikeout and walk adjustment with that asterisk for low occurrence situations. And then they talk about pitcher hitting. You saw the generic pitcher hitting card. They do say that some NL pitchers have their own hitting card. I have not seen that in my quick review of what I got in this game, but you would just have to look out for that. There are a lot of advanced features. They kind of say this is more for the avid fan. We talked about already, but there's some individual fielding customization that can happen. I'll touch on that at the end. We already talked about arm ratings. There's all kinds of interesting things here, and I've just kind of listed them all out. You find most of these in other sims. Yeah, we've already talked about the 2 in the upper right there. But you can have ejections and special things that can happen after a hit by pitch, and all kinds of interesting things, including ballpark effects, which we talked about, which may affect the home run rate. And then they have their own so-called weird plays. They're just a handful of what we would typically refer to as rare plays. So this is what the fielding chart looks like. They call it a possible change chart. So, for a given result off the main hitting chart, which you see down the left, it's possible that result may get changed depending on the fielding rating of the fielder. I don't fully understand this, but I can see that a plus rating, like we saw with Brooks Robinson at the beginning, is a good rating, and it might change certain results to be better than the default result, including, if you see down in the error sections, it might change would-be errors into a certain number of potential outs, or an out, depending on the fielder's fielding rating. And then on the far right, there's the minus. And so the minus ratings for those fielders can either change the type of result from one type of out to another type of out, which is less favorable for the defense. But as you can see here, it could change some of the infield outs into singles or into errors. So it kind of all makes sense. But there's also an X fielding rating. So if he's not a plus or a minus, he could be an X. And I guess every fielder has one of those three. But I don't fully understand how to read that section of the chart, and it looks like it actually may also involve the pitcher support rating as well. But occasionally the results can be changed from what the default is. Probably warrants further study, or actually just trying to play the game. But it wasn't completely clear to me how the ratings are assigned, other than it does make sense that Brooks Robinson was a plus. So that's the fielding. I did notice right before I started this video that there are a couple other things that come in the card decks. One on the left was an advertisement for what looked like a newsletter called the Sports Column with an exclamation point. I Googled that term, including the exclamation point, and you will find a hit for that, but it's actually an online sports column. It's nothing to do with hotcorner, but it would be interesting to see an old issue of that. I'm sure if it's like certain other newsletters, it probably has a bunch of clarifications on the rules and stuff. And again, I may email Dominic at some point to see if he still has any of those. And then on the right is an order form where you could have gotten a player card with your name on it, but based on any player from 1901 to 1990. So that was an interesting offering as well. That is it. And so I'm going to sign off, and thank you for listening. Please comment, especially if you know anything about this game. I don't know if there will be a follow-up to this video or not, but I hope you found it enjoyable. Take care.